What if construction isn't a tech-averse industry, but a misread one? We keep hearing the same story, that builders are slow to adopt, that innovation stalls in the field. But what if the problem isn't cultural resistance, but it's poorly designed tools? Tools that speak code, not context, that ignore workflows, comms, and the pressures that actually define a site. Today's guest, Ethan Au, is flipping that narrative. As co-founder of Wenti Labs, he's building AI that doesn't ask site teams to change how they do their work. It embeds directly into how they already do it. Document intelligence that doesn't need a UI. Invisible automation made for the field. Ethan's journey started on site deep in one of Singapore's largest developers, where he saw even how small frictions, like version chaos or misfiled PDFs, were costing teams hours and clarity. That experience shaped how he builds today from the ground up, with empathy for the messiness of real construction. So today we ask, if the field is already ready, are we just building the wrong tools? And what does it take to create tech that truly fits the work? Welcome to the Structural Intelligence Podcast, the show where we explore the intersection of engineering, technology, and innovation. I'm your host, Owen Keenan, structural engineer, entrepreneur, and tech enthusiast. Each episode brings together innovators, experts, and thought leaders who are pushing the boundaries of what's possible in engineering and technology. Through deep conversations and practical insights, we explore how new tools, techniques, and mindsets are reshaping our industry. We hope you enjoy this episode. Welcome to the Structural Intelligence Podcast, the show where we explore the evolving frontier between engineering, technology, and the built world. I'm your host, Owen Keenan, structural engineer, founder, and tech enthusiast. Today, we're going deep into construction, not just the nuts and bolts, but the workflows, frustrations, and invisible gaps where innovation often fails to land. My guest is Ethan Au, co-founder of Wenti Labs, a startup that's asking the hard questions why tech adoption in construction so often stalls, and what it looks like to fix them from the ground up. Ethan started his journey inside the belly of the beast, running projects, wrangling forms, witnessing firsthand the disconnect between software solutions and site realities. In this conversation, we'll unpack his journey, the myths of slow adoption, and how AI can finally become fit for purpose. So Ethan, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Owen.
That's great. So that was, I've done a little bit of an introduction, but I'd love to hear in your own words a bit about you and sort of the things that you're working on. Yeah,
sure. My name is Ethan. I founded Wenti Labs back in December 2023. So as you said, I've started my career as a construction project manager. So if you've went past on your way from the airport to here, you would have passed by one of my projects, which is Capital Green, the one with the red funnel on the top. So
yeah, great. Yeah,
did it from the very beginning all the way up to TOP. So I think that was the early career where I really learned a lot about all the different workflows, what happens in the construction site, all the different coordination. And as a project manager, I think specifically a junior project manager, a lot of my workflow was really around tracking all the chaos that happens in the construction site, right? And one of the most crucial sort of like productivity tool that we use on construction site, especially in Singapore, it's WhatsApp. So we have like 20 different WhatsApp group with different sets of stakeholders, whether it's consultant, your contractors, your client, subcontractor, and everybody's resolving issues in real time across this coordination group. That chaos actually create more problem for us because then now somebody would have to manually figure out what's happening. And that somebody tends to be me, being the most junior guy on site.
that's
right. My supervisor or my manager will come to me and, hey, Ethan, what's the progress like today? And like, XYZ, what's the update? And I'll be, scrambling, trying to like sift through my emails, the meeting minutes, like just different source of information and try to figure out like what's the most updated, latest and greatest update that's relevant for him, right? And I think it creates a lot of delay in terms of decision making because of all this like manual data gathering. So that's where like sort of the inspiration that came along when we started Wenti Labs.
Yeah,
you can think about, can I not build an AI version of myself, right? Literally replacing, the jobs that I used to, or rather the jobs I hate doing as a human being, right? Like why can't we use AI to do that today? And I think the short answer is yes, AI at the reasoning capability at where we are today, we can already do that, right? AI can already take over a lot of the work that I used to do as a human being, right? Not everything, right? Obviously, a lot of the problem solving stuff that we do on site, I think that's really pretty much still human, like experience matters. But a lot of the documentation work, a lot of the lower level gathering data, searching for information, where do I get the right information, what is the most updated
A lot
version?
about information, isn't it?
Exactly, right.
Look, I appreciate that, and hearing your background as like a construction project manager and things like that, I can relate to that. I was a site engineer for nearly 4 years and working on those jobs, doing civil construction, and yes,
Right.
information in real time, trying to make decisions on a construction site. It's very fast paced,
Yeah.
and you have to make sure it's right and correct. So, so I guess that's a bit of your like site background. And then you talked a bit about Wenti Labs and what it does. But like personally for yourself, can you give us a bit of a background of your startup journey as well? Yeah, like and how that sort of transition. Obviously, you've identified a little bit of a problem to solve in that sense, but like, how did you jump into that? Like being in construction, it's not like we get a lot of startup founders from construction, is it?
It's true. That's true. So like after CapitaLand, like I left and joined the fastest growing company at that point in time. It was Uber. So Uber was still around in Singapore back then. So I think that's where like the second biggest sort of inspiration came along, right? Where data being in real time, like how we at any point in time we can look up for every single rides, how many rides we're doing in Singapore, whether it's in Sao Paulo, whether it's in New York, we can already see all this data flowing into a system, and then internally then we can already check like why are we having less driver activation for the day, what's our supply like for different regions of Singapore, and that gives us the ability to really like make real-time decision. Like let's do a promo code, right? Let's activate the drivers in this particular area. Let's do a search so that more supply goes to that, right? I think that is really a big enlightenment around like, hey, why can't construction do that, right? Why do we always have a delay of minimum a week between what's done versus what's reported? Why can't it be way more real-time? And I think a big part of it is like how Uber does it is because there's an app. We all have a phone, we have an app.
Yeah.
And it got me thinking, like, what is one common app that all of us have and all of us use in the construction, right? So, and I think very quickly, the conclusion was WhatsApp, because everything that was done for the day, everything that was reported. So like, and then after Uber, I left because Uber got acquired by Grab here in Singapore. So I didn't join Grab at that point in time, but I ended up joining Travis Kalanick's next startup, which is Cloud Kitchens. So we started building, like back to construction again, where I started building delivery-only kitchens in Singapore. And again, the nightmare happened, right? Like all this chaos that I have to go and like sort of like figure out where we are, what's the roadblock, how do we unblock certain things, how do we make sure progress is going. Like it's all again back to WhatsApp. Like the coordination happens there. And to me, like the industry has never moved, right? Like for the last 5 years, like why hasn't anything changed, right? I've left the industry for so long. Like we've gone from like, like Instagram was around, right? There's like, Uber, then there's Grab, there's like so many more technology on the phone, but the tool set for the construction team, it's still pretty much PDF, email, right? Like you have your CAD drawing and your beam drawing, but like the upside is still quite limited.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think when GPT-4, I think when we started this was really the capability of GPT-4 when it first announced that it was released as a publicly available API to developers. I think that's where we started sort of testing out what we could do with it, right? I think, and that's where really when we first, and that was in July 2023. So that's where we first built like, some simple MVP, went around. Like the first MVP that I built was fairly simple. It's basically it's on Telegram. Like I take photo of name cards and then it gets information off the name card, and then it gave it, like it put into my own Excel sheet, which is kind of like my CRM, right? Which, hey, I thought that worked really well for me. Like how then can we apply the same technology to the construction industry? Now, of course, I had a lot of like thoughts around where best can I use the technology, and it keeps coming back to construction because of how my career started in construction. I know quite a few, like the owners and like project managers and people from the industry. Started talking to them, hey, would this be useful? And then like sort of like gathered, like the idea is really
validation, right?
Exactly, right? Like validate the idea before we build anything, right? Like let's make sure that somebody will actually pay for the solution, and and that's how we sort of landed our first customer, and then we never looked back since.
So did you get your first customer first and then build it, or
That's
did
right.
you
That's right.
did you do it the other way around? Or
That's right. No, like it was like we had a concept of an idea, like there are some building blocks that's already done, but essentially that workflow, our first workflow was truly customized for that particular customer.
Great.
Right. But then from there on, it became our core solution where then now we can repeat this particular flow for any other construction company out there.
Yeah.
Because then while construction being such a complicated sort of process, right? I think everybody at the end of the day sort of arrive at the same conclusion that the workflow works, right? And being a similar workflow across different stakeholder, it helps, right? Because then from
context,
from different project, and that's where we also thought about how can we then use AI to understand the workflow and not the conventional way of like the solution provider where you're like, okay, this is my solution, this is how my database is set up, hence you have to fit your way of working into my workflow. Whereas we take a very non-opinionated approach where, back to the point about we sell first, then we build, right? Like, so we will always go to them, tell me what's your workflow today, right? Like if I give you 1 million intern to ease the different interaction of the workflow, how would the intern be useful for your team? And that's how we sort of think about can the AI replace what an intern would do? And it also helps with our onboarding, requirement gathering, because if you can't explain the task to an intern, it tells me there's something wrong with the process, not the not the technology out there. Because which means I don't care how you scale up with infinite budget, infinite headcount, the intern wouldn't be able to understand the workflow. Means that's where you just start thinking about that. Right?
So that's so interesting. Like going from obviously site engineer, you're a bit of a startup journey, identifying that problem, and then I think a lot of those that are watching are either in construction or they're engineers in consultancies or whatever it may be, or building businesses, and they're trying to figure out, okay, I've got this workflow or this application idea or something that I want to sell to others. But I like the narrative where, okay, I've got a concept, got an idea, let's test it, let's get to market, and you sort of, from what I understand, got traction from that initial response and moving on. So what I think what I really perked up to hear there is, construction has its own workflow.
Yep.
Right? It's got its own processes and procedures in place, and they're probably similar across many different industries, but applied in maybe different types of ways.
Yeah.
A lot of it's obviously about communication. Right. And you mentioned the different platforms that people use, your PDFs, your emails, your WhatsApp groups, you'll have your BIM files and other things like that. Then you got your finance software, and you've got all these different tools. And I think sometimes particularly for construction, where it's the really nuts and bolts type of thing. The tech solutions try to wrap themselves around it and maybe impose restrictions, or they're not quite fit for purpose, are they?
That's right.
There's this construction workflow, and I suppose I've been pondering it, and since our discussion that we've had, is that maybe labeling construction or that sort of industry as slow to adopt isn't sort of the right view of it. Maybe the tech isn't there yet, or it's the UI is not quite there. I mean, could you talk to that? I mean, the late adopter myth, and I mean how you've seen it, because obviously you've got a tech product that's looking and that's currently being adopted by construction companies. How do you see that?
Right. No, I think it's spot on, right? I think the myth is that there's no tech, tech adoption is slow because there's no tech for the construction industry. But I would argue that there's way too much solution out there. And most of the solution are sort of not fit for purpose, right? To the earlier point, that it creates almost like a roadblock for companies to let me try out new solution, right? Because then this is the 5th iteration of a solution that work half the time, right? And then the other half the time, I still got to do what I need to do, right? Which means it just create way more workload for everybody in the team, which then have this impression of okay, a lot of people will say, okay, this is newest, shiniest toy, and then try to adopt that. People try and fail, after a while, they develop this sort of like resistance to, okay, you know what, it's just going to be a flashy toy. It's going to pass. And then like, and construction being an industry that's been around for millennia, right? Like since the first building, right? Like, so I think
the pyramids, right?
yeah, right.
Even before that,
Yeah, exactly, right. Like, so like they are well established way of how people do things, and like I think in construction, I think being not fit for purpose, like especially here where in a project where there's a lot of stakeholders, the coordination becomes way more complex because different company has that, you know, like slightly different workflow,
and different systems.
differences.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
yeah. And what is the lowest common denominator, which ends up most of the time being email, right? Because having a system, like imagine today I have a login and a password for one system. I move to another project 2 months later. It's a totally fresh set of system, right? And like, and I think sometimes a lot of these construction software tends to try to do this, right? Like we want to solve every single problem out there, right? Like, okay, there's 100 different workflows. Let me help you solve 100 workflows. But being on site, when I switch on the app, you have just given me one solution and 99 roadblocks because now I got to fumble through, you know, where do I find the right information that I need? Where do I go to the right things that I need to fill up? Where do I, you know, like, and that doesn't work, right? Because in construction site, obviously we've been in there, like it's not the most pleasant like condition to, you know, gonna like slowly play with your phone, right? People want to get things done and move on, right? So I think that's where sort of like a lot of the existing technology sort of created that workflow, that roadblock for a lot of folks, right? So two things, right? Being transient and like, you know, just how things are way over designed for what the purpose of that the task is, right? So like just a simple one for tracking progress, right? So today, like, you know how throughout the entire construction phase, like there's different things that we track, right? So at the start, we could be probably tracking like piling or excavation, but at the end, we could tracking like, oh, how many PowerPoint have been installed? Is the aircon tested and commissioned, right? Like, so the system couldn't evolve as fast unless like, and then you end up now you have like 20 different templates that you use to track a different thing, right? So to a site engineer, to a person on site, right, that is a problem, right? So then WhatsApp always falls back to become the most common sort of solution where regardless of which project, right, you know, we're tracking certain things. It comes across, right?
Yeah. So, so from what I understand is that like you sort of, like we're talking to, okay, there's so many different systems, there's other bits and pieces and they use it in different ways, but there is a common denominator in terms of communication. You mentioned email, but you also mentioned the chats.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting insight to I suppose Wenti Labs and what you've done. But I think maybe just jumping into that a little bit more is, what do you see as, I guess, are the common mistakes that say tech founders or tech companies when they go to build something for construction industry?
Right.
What are some of the common mistakes that they make? You know, like
right.
And I think personally, it's a lot in the user interface, the UI.
Yeah.
There's a way that people need to see information in a timely manner or whatever it is. But from your perspective, what do you think?
So I think that's spot on, really. I think from the get-go, I think one of the very conscious decision that we've made was we would not build an app, right? Because I think the common understanding, like for an engineer, for like, you know, somebody who runs a startup, like everybody has a phone, right? I think that's a common assumption that everybody has a phone. But when you go to the construction site, that's not always true. That's not always the case. And even if they have a phone, it might not be as powerful that could run and support the app. So I think that becomes like a problem where, you know, like I have 10 workers, only 3 of them could install the app. 7 of them still rely on the 3 of them, right? So, and that creates like this double data entry problem where, you know, we are always relying on 1% or 2% to make sure that all the data in these entry is done correctly, all the information is inputted correctly based on the form, based on like, you know, whatever template that was set up. And obviously, like back to the point where, you know, the whole industry is pretty transient, where like, you know, at different stage of the construction, you have different set of teams that comes in. Like then now you have to think about, right, okay, every 3 months, 6 months, when the construction phase changes, I got to retrain a new team of people to use this particular app, right? I think then it becomes a big change management, right? Like sort of a uphill climb from like, and it's a never ending uphill climb, right? if I'm deploying a software for a typical B2B sales, like you do it one, you educate everybody, from then you're good, right? But in a construction project, that doesn't happen because every 3 months you gotta onboard a new set of people, and hope that they don't make mistake. And I think a lot of system is designed with the ideal outcome in mind, right? Like I think a good example is BEAM, right? Like for a BEAM model to work, the clash detection to work, you have to label all your properties properly. Otherwise, everything is a clash, right? And like, having so many different workflows along the way, right? Like I think people tend to make mistake. And then when you have an idealistic view of the world where, okay, the assumption for the clash detection is that the model must be correct at every stage, I think then it becomes like, it's not as useful as people thought it would be, right? Even down to, you think about, there are software for takeoff, there are software for, like clash detection, how do you automatically do a messing and stuff like that, right? I think all this is a big underlying assumption where the base model is done correctly, but when not everybody is working to that standard, so then you are just setting up for failure. So with that in mind, we're very clear that let's build it such a way that it is, I think Netflix calls it chaos monkey, right? How do you make sure that it always breaks, but how do you unbreak the system every single time? It becomes a resilient system where even with low quality data, we can still make the best out of it. So that then the intervention is minimal and you get the minimum amount of data that you need for reporting, for compliance, for payments, right? So that's how we sort of have a design principle for our company.
That's great. Yeah, I think that leads us into a bit of the discussion, and I'd love to be able to dive into your solution, so the Wenti Labs, and we talked a little bit to it, but I'd love to see how it would work day to day. So if you were to describe simply, say if a company were to onboard and start to deploy Wenti Labs, the product of Wenti Labs, what does that look like?
Right.
What does that look like from, say, maybe the decision maker point of view, the project manager point of view, and maybe the customer? Or not the customer, as in the user.
The user.
The user, right? How does that? What does that look like? And could you give us an example?
Yeah, sure. Like I can give you a recent example where we help our customer to do safety tracking. Just like safety non-compliance, safety incidents. So like the main user is the safety team, right? Like so they're typically a safety manager that's on site. We spoke directly to the project manager. So then they love the solution, and then we got started with them. Took us about 2 days to set up the system, and then it's good to go. So all they have to do is basically add our WhatsApp agent number into their existing group chats.
And so that's a WhatsApp chat.
That's right.
And then adding an agent into that chat.
That's right.
Okay. Continue.
That's done, right? Typically, so what happens on site is that obviously every day to day, they have a lot of issues that they pick up, right? Be it like, there's a puddle of water, like the barricade is not done properly. There's a lot of these kind of things that just happen in real time, and every single worker is actually in that WhatsApp group. Everybody who spots something would take a photo, say that, hey, this is done, and then then somebody else would go and work on it, and at the end of the day they would then close the issue. And all these issues, they're closed on such a rapid rate, right? Like people tend to skip the part where they are doing this data entry into the main app that they have. So because it's just way too cumbersome, and then the workers typically, I have 20 other things to do. This is not one on priority, right? The moment I snap a photo, I mention where it is, somebody would go and fix it.
So that's right. So it's not like a process where it's like, okay, log it, and then send a ticket, and then somebody comes out and does it, and then logs the ticket. It's a, hey guys, on the WhatsApp chat, there's a puddle over there that needs sorted out, and then the supervisor or whatever comes over and does it.
Exactly. And
that gap between them. So that's great. Continue with that.
That's close, right? To what happens for us is then we help them. The agent would then sit in the WhatsApp group, help them track all these different issues that's open. We help them churn out a report at the end of the day. And the report mimics whatever existing template they already have. Because essentially what we're trying to get the AI to do is that read these WhatsApp messages, figure out what's the problem, write into this particular template where location, severity, what's the description, like photos, date and time, right? All this is already a given from the context of the message, from the context of the WhatsApp group. Which project this is, right? Which location this is, right? So that's how we sort of hijack the entire flow so that nobody needs to do the secondary work where, okay, now I got to log in, scroll through my WhatsApp chat, log into the app, and then, okay, this is issue 1.
Yeah, do a list, do a form. Yeah.
And then, like, at the end of the day, like, and it's important, right? Because on the overall project tracking point of view, we do want to know what are the common recurring issues, how do we prevent it from happening in the future. Like, another client of mine, like, they have multiple projects at the same time, right? So we sold to the HQ level. What we can do for them is really now, across different projects, like in the past, the report is an Excel file or it's a PDF. Nobody analyze it like across different projects, right? I mean, they can, but I think the effort is just quite a lot, right, to get there. But now with us, what we do is we ingest all these different reports from different projects, and we can already highlight to them like what are the top occurring projects. And like, mind you, right, all the different project has a different stack of like solution that they use, different group of like safety consultant that they use. So every report comes in a different format. Every project comes at like the output is slightly different naming. And then what we can do is really, the AI will be able to understand work from height is the same of like, working from height, for example.
Yeah,
right? It's just different naming convention, but like if you use Excel to do the analysis, then like you have two different issues basically. But when AI was the one that's like doing the first cut, being able to do some reasoning around like, what am I reading right now? Do they look the same? And then very quickly we can tell them like month on month, week on week, what are the major issue? Is this like when we see an issue, like it doesn't end there, right? To be really able to save like
decision making, isn't it?
Like, how do we make sure that we provide enough training, right? Is this a structural, like, as a company, do we have a structural problem? Or is this a problem that's isolated to that particular site, right? Like, all these things can then now be floated up way quicker.
That's it. It's that closing the gap of that time.
That's right.
Right. And it's that time communication gap.
That's right.
That you're really, just to break it down a bit more, that for that first example.
Yeah.
Right. So you've got essentially the system of safety, right, and maybe incidents, or it might be hazards, that you're identifying.
That's right.
And what your solution is, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just trying to get an understanding for the audience, is that you've got a method of communication between the team, which is the WhatsApp group.
Correct.
And so that WhatsApp group, if someone spots or identifies a hazard, they'll either take a photo and they'll say that.
That's right.
And then
that's already an existing workflow, right? They're already doing it with or without us, right?
That's the interesting part, right? So this is what they're already doing. Okay?
Exactly.
Typically, someone would take that, and go and fix it or whatever it is, and it would be done. In the back end, because construction projects need to keep documentation.
Exactly.
That needs to be logged in some sort of register and things like that. And this is, I think, where I felt the friction come when I've been working in the construction industry, is that just the paperwork is so much, right? And it almost, it doesn't fully take it out, but it allows the flow of the action to be continued,
right?
But the flow of the actual documentation and closeout to continue at the same time.
Exactly.
And so the solution is adding the agent, the AI agent, to the WhatsApp chat.
That's right.
It's predetermined. I'm assuming you build that agent in such a way that it understands the way that it needs to collect the information.
That's right.
And the way that it will close out the information and who needs to be notified, and it puts it into the system that already exists.
Exactly.
Would that be correct?
No, I think that's spot on.
Yeah.
Like, the idea is really like, we help to, like, the gap today is really work done on site and work considered done when the documentation is created.
Right. Yep.
So we are using an AI agent and like, why we call it AI agent, because like the idea is really, instead of, so it's not so much that we are building an agent every single time for every single workflow, right? Sure. The idea is just we are providing the right context for it. So we will tell them that, okay, this is the WhatsApp group, this is what's being discussed, this is what the agent need to look out for in terms of like, they could be talking about like, let's go for lunch, like and all those kind of things. We will totally ignore that. But like, you could imagine as if I have an intern that's just sitting behind the screen and just, reading every single chat that comes through. And the moment that they say, hey, it's a safety issue, okay, great, let me copy this and paste into an Excel file. Sure. Right? And then that's how we sort of like closing the gap between like, when work is recorded. And so that the faster we finish that part of work, right? You think about in a day, we could have 200 messages. People do miss out things. And these are the, like, if a barricade is not properly done,
that's right.
There's so many things that's going on, somebody miss it. I think this is where incident happens. I think we have a chance to, how do we up the game in terms of like actually making the site safer for everybody.
That's right. And you get and the sort of closeout and action side of things is as important as the documentation
That's
side
right.
of things, because the documentation side for those that are managing the site,
Yeah.
they can then make their decisions.
That's right.
They can actually go, okay, these are some urgent items that haven't been closed out. We need to go and do that. This
Sure.
is the resources that we need to do
Yeah.
to get it. I really like that. So do you have any other examples?
Yeah.
I'd like to sort of dive into it, because I think for the listeners, what I want to help them to do is to elevate their understanding of, okay, there's so much hype around AI, so much hype around agents or whatever it is, but there's actually practical applications.
That's right.
Which you're demonstrating. Would you be able to give us?
No, I think like, I think take out everything, right? Like, I think underneath the hood, right, what we're essentially solving is really converting unstructured data into a structured format, right? So like safety issue being like in real world, there's this unstructured information, you take a photo and then you put in an Excel file as a report, right? I think that's one. The other big part that we just started doing with another customer is really just around tracking concrete delivery, right? So just to give you an idea of the process, right? Like there will be a WhatsApp group between the site engineer and the supplier. And then they will just WhatsApp to them and say that, okay, tomorrow, or maybe a phone call, tomorrow, can you send me like 3 trucks of like this amount and this grade? The next day, the concrete provider will come, and then they will deliver. And I think the concrete supply company, they are very well digitized, right? They have their delivery order, everything in an iPad, has a system that people can tally what was delivered. But the problem is really from the contractor point of view, if I have 3 suppliers, I have to deal with 3 different systems. I have 3 different WhatsApp chat with 3 different suppliers. And then when every single load that's get delivered, so in terms of QA, QC, what they're doing today, right? Like for quality control, every truck that comes, they would, existing workflow, right? They would take a photo of the delivery order. They'll say, okay, this is delivered today. They will take a photo of the slump test, right? I'm not sure whether you're familiar.
Yeah, slump test, yeah.
Right, like basically just pouring a concrete to measure what's the height of the flow, and then like they have to document that, right? Because obviously, if that slump test fail, they have to reject it, and they have to reject from the delivery order. So then that is a big workflow just from the construction, from the contractor, the main contractor point of view, because they have to track every single load, and like in a day, there could be like 20 different trucks that's coming through. Somebody spends a day in a week, in a month to just document down this, right? And then like that's not the end, right? Because for every like X volume of concrete that they pour, they also have to do cube tests. And the lab is obviously also very digitized, right? They will come back with a very nice report. You can download the e-version of report. But imagine right now I have 200 different load that I've poured.
Yeah, that's right.
Like 600 cubes, right?
Yeah, I've seen concrete delivered, yeah.
And then like the PDF comes through, and then somebody got to like for each cube, okay, what's the strength? Did it meet or did it fail the test, right? Somebody again have to use the same amount of time to go and document it. Same information, right? Like I think in terms of work done, it's still concrete. But like from the contractor point of view, like I have my operations team that does this. I have my QA QC team that tracks the safety, the concrete strength test. And then I also have my finance team who needs to pay the vendor.
Yep.
But same information source, right? Like, but today, of course, they have somebody who spent days just trying to create these 3 different tracking data sheet so that like somebody can make sense out of it. But with us, like now, all 3 workflows are done instantaneously the moment the delivery order is taken. At the end of the month, somebody would go to the supplier's website, export all the delivery order, send it to us, and then we would then help them to create that report. The PDF that comes through from the lab, email it to us, like not through WhatsApp, right? Just forward the email to us. We will read that PDF. We will figure out what's the cube number, look out from their sheet to say, okay, this is the pour, this is that particular batch, and what's the strength, what's the cube number, did it meet, did it pass or fail, right? And then think about from the documentation point of view, right? So I think Singapore is a big, like we are pushing this whole idea of like integrated digital construction quite big, right? The IDD. So like everything needs to be documented basically, and the lab comes back with their own naming convention. The contractor needs to rename every single file they come through so that then now I know which date I will pour this. Is this a 7 days or 10 days strength test, right? Or whatever, right? So then now we automatically use the AI as an intern. This is a naming convention. Read what's in the file. change the name so that it matches the convention, upload it into Autodesk so that then we can track the folder correctly. So
Yeah, that's a great application.
simple, like not rocket science, right? Like
No.
doesn't change the world, but like it's all this painful sort of like job that's really, I feel like, in construction, we keep saying that the churn is very high. People are burnt out. And I
This
think
sort of thing, yeah, isn't it?
documentation, paperwork, right? Like I've already done the actual work.
You want to make the decisions, don't you?
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
And now I'm spending like 90% of my time trying to get the data correct and then only 10% of time using it for decision making. But why can't we flip that, right? Why can't we outsource the annoying manual work to the AI and then we let human do the more important work where, like the decision making, the problem solving? How do I make sure we coordinate better on site? Is this concrete? Like, like, are we ordering the right grade, right? Like all this kind of thing. With the right information, you can do analysis. And I kid you not, right? There's a lot of systems out there already that try to do the analysis. But I think the problem that they always face is that the data that comes through is not clean, right? The first mile of data that's not clean. And that's
And this is a good capture as well.
Yeah.
But I just want to take to your point is that there is, I think, also in terms of adoption, particularly in construction, around tech and other things like that, but particularly AI is, you can't trust the answer, whatever it is. But really, I like how you talk about it in terms of an intern, right? And an intern, you'd give certain tasks to, but you wouldn't give him or her other specific tasks.
Precisely.
To someone of more experience that you give it to, right? But if you can treat it if you can consider, like you said, if you can explain it to an intern, you've got the documented workflows and processes that they can follow, it can be done, And one thing I think construction companies, project managers, other people like that need to consider is that there is a technology that we're using right now, which is like AI agents.
Yeah.
And it's still developing, it's early in the piece, but what it can essentially do is free us up from those menial tasks.
That's right.
Take that burnout away.
Right.
It's not going to solve the world's problems,
Exactly,
you know what I mean?
right.
But it's going to be able to take those specific things and allow you for better compliance, better safety, better construction program workflows, all of that sort of stuff. If you can ask yourself as a project manager or whatever, what role can I give to an intern?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That I can now outsource with an AI agent.
Exactly.
And if you're not asking yourself that question right now, give it 1 or 2 years, you'll be 10 years behind.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
I think so.
That's what I think.
I think so.
And I think it's those construction companies that are really thinking on this forefront in digital thing, how we can adopt it.
Yeah.
What I'd like to do just briefly is to jump into, okay, so we've got this workflows.
Yeah.
You've got the existing UIs, existing workflows that construction companies use. You're able to plug into that. There's this piece of like, how does Wenti Labs do it, right? You've got this AI agent.
Yeah.
That you'll obviously you build it. You'll set up its own system and how it works. But maybe if we can just give it like a brief little overview of how that works.
Right.
Because I think maybe people think it's like a little bit of a black box, but there are regimented steps in there and how we can use it. So would you be able to explain?
Yeah. I mean, like agent is a big word, right? Like, like I always like to fall back to the term intern, right? So instead of thinking like agent is one black box, right? Like now think of them as a team of intern, right? And at every step of the way, you're giving the intern a very clear instruction on like, this is the input and this is what I expect as the output.
Yeah.
And that's how we sort of like, every single one of these tasks is basically a team of interns working together. Like, and then it could be as simple as like, look at this photo and describe the photo, right? That could be a task that we send to the LLM. The LLM come up with a description, but do nothing else, right? Because then in a subsequent flow, that's where we will kind of like, like run it such a way that it makes sense. And underneath the hood, I think as a company, what we've essentially done is that like, you can think of us as we have Lego blocks, right? For different construction workflow, while there's certain nuance, a lot of the context doesn't change. So what we can do for every customer is that like, okay, let me explain to me how you're doing it today. And then underneath back of my head, I would be able to tell you, right, okay, these are the, like maybe the 3 interns that are going to activate for your workflow.
Sure.
For the concrete tracking one, maybe it's like these 5 other work interns, right? And that's how we essentially do it. So underneath the hood, like when we call it agent, right? Like that's exactly what happened, right? We have like different tool use, we have different steps of the way that we sort of process the data, and then like how we've done it. Like I did another very big concern that like in the market is, oh, what about hallucination, right? Hallucination is like sort of like a 2024 problem, doesn't happen anymore right now, right? Like, but how we've essentially solved it is really, can I have a final intern to check the work of everybody else, right? Like, so if does this make sense? Does it kind of look like your previous output? If it does, great, you can go ahead. If it doesn't, let's get the intern to redo the whole flow, right? I think the fancy term that the industry use right now is LLM as a judge.
Yeah.
But like essentially, like, in my mind, like on first principle, I'm just getting somebody to check the work of the previous people, right? Like, and like LLM being like there's no memory, like in every API call, it's kind of distinct. I think it helps, right? It's both a feature and a bug, where then now you lose a lot of context, but at the same time, it is then now a new set of like perspective solving the same issue. And I think that's how we kind of solve a lot of the problem that, like in the industry, people solve, or how do you solve a hallucination? How do you make sure the answer is correct? How do you make sure that, like, there are different techniques out there that we use? And like essentially how we like to explain it is really, we have a lot of interns, right?
And you got to check the work of an intern.
Exactly.
Don't you?
Right. Yeah.
You always will.
You always will. Exactly. Right.
I think we need to really separate, the whole process of manual information and data collection from the decision-making process.
100%.
So there are two things.
For sure.
An experienced individual will check, verify the information that's getting given to you, no matter what it is, whether it comes from AI, whether it comes from a different tool, whatever it is. And I think that's the attitude and mindset that we need to sort of have moving forward. So those are, I guess we could talk on use cases and other things like that for a long time, but I think that gives a really good perspective of, okay, this is, so when you talk to AI agents, so for example, in the context of construction, right? AI agents, you can think about it maybe as an intern with a specific role, specific output, right? But also that lives in the heart of a workflow.
That's right.
Everybody has a role to play.
Yeah.
They'll have a role to play as well. And so Wenti Labs are sort of at the forefront of building those at the moment. And I think about it, companies are often looking, they're like, how do we integrate? How do we stay in front of this AI? How do we keep on top of the emerging tech? And one thing I can say is that specialists such as yourselves, what you can do is you can take all that learning that you've taken, right, and apply it to the situations where, in-house teams are struggling to even just get their feet on trying to figure out what an agent is as well. So it's another leg up. So I guess to sort of round out the conversation, what I'd like to do is sort of hand it over to an AI host, right? And what it will do is it will just wrap up, it'll ask a question, and let's see if this one works.
Let's see how good the intern is.
Exactly. Let's see how good. This is the one task I need to give it. I'll hand you over now to the AI host.
Thank you, Owen. The true measure of innovation in construction isn't just about adopting new technology, but ensuring that technology genuinely serves the people using it. Today, Ethan highlighted how crucial it is for tools to align with real-world workflows rather than forcing teams to adapt to something that doesn't quite fit. Ethan, what do you see as the most transformative change that needs to happen for construction teams to fully embrace and trust these new technologies?
Yeah, I think like the biggest thing that the mindset change that needs to happen is really, in construction, we need to, like sort of think about the typical way that we do it is we will think about like, okay, how do we make sure we plan up to the final T's and the final I's, right, that has to be dotted before we actually launch something. And that's pretty much construction, right? You will plan the drawings, you'll plan the size, which is, I understand why it's done that way, right? Because like your column that's wrong, it could be disastrous, right? But I think in technology, I think the mindset that the construction team need to have is that like, if the tech doesn't work 100% today, we can patch it tomorrow. In 2 months' time, OpenAI just released an agent flow today, right? Like technology will just keep getting better. I think it is much better for the industry to get started today. While it doesn't solve everything yet, start small, right? Like think about one place that we can do, experiment it so that you would actually know what's the limitation of the model, where you wish it couldn't do it today yet, right? But like we can talk again 6 months later, right? And you will be way better equipped than everybody else in the industry who like, okay, let's wait for the perfect model to come, right? Like I think by the time that comes, I think people who wait and see, right, for the perfect model to come, I think they'll be left behind quite a bit.
Absolutely, Ethan. That mindset shift is indeed transformative. Embracing technology as an evolving tool rather than waiting for perfection allows the industry to grow and adapt in real time. It's about starting small, learning from the process, and being ready to iterate and improve. In the end, those who take that first step now will likely lead the way in the future.
Yeah, looks like OpenAI can soon take over both of our conversations.
Yeah, while we're even having this conversation. No, that's great. I really appreciate the conversation, and I think construction is a great field.
Yeah.
It's a fertile field for innovation,
That's right.
and to be able to like delve into these sorts of things and talk about it in practical workflows
Exactly.
of how it's actually working right now it's been great. So do you have anything that you want to say before we finish? Is there any last words?
Yeah, I guess like the last word that I have is really like for the industry, really to embrace the innovation, right? Think about like what other things that the AI can do, and really have an open mindset on like, what the LLM can do today. Give it tasks that it's already good at versus trying to, have some complex tasks that even human having problems to solve today, and then you expect the AI to be able to do it well. I think that it's not the right approach, at least not yet. And we will talk again maybe in 6 months' time when AGI actually comes.
No, that's so great. No, I appreciate it. And again, thank you for being on the podcast. I'll just wrap us up. Just sort of some final thoughts from me. If this episode reshaped the way you think about tech and construction, connect with me on LinkedIn or Ethan as well from Wenti Labs. I'm always sharing insights about structural workflows, automation, and practical innovation. So check out Wenti Labs, see how Ethan and his teams are bringing intelligence to the edge of a construction workflow. So if you found this valuable, hit follow, subscribe, or share it with a colleague, and let's build smarter together. Thanks, Ethan.
Thanks, Owen.
Cheers.
You have a good one.